Huh. I can't go to the funeral. I'm going on a trip now. Besides, you haven't done much of wifey duties. And yet you were so selfish.
My beloved mother passed away after a long battle with illness, and it was my husband who lectured me not to impose his own common sense on me when I contacted him about the funeral arrangements. It's unbelievable. I don't know anyone more unreasonable who prioritizes a trip over his family's misfortune. Neither I nor the stupid man knew at the time that things would turn out so horribly a few days later. My name's Sally, 32 years old, and I work at my parents' flower shop. Many different people visit the shop, and I feel a sense of fulfillment every day. For example, people who order a bouquet of roses with a slightly embarrassed look on their faces to propose to their lovers. People who come to get gardening advice because it's their hobby. And Linda, a regular customer, was one of them. She was a very bright and talkative person who always made our family laugh. A few years ago, when I was at work, Linda suddenly asked me, "Are you dating anyone, Shelley?" I was surprised by the sudden question from Linda, but my mother answered right away, "I hope she meets someone nice. But Shelley is shy, so..." I couldn't help but blush. Although I had some dating experiences, I had never met anyone I could imagine marrying. However, my parents were probably worried about my future as an only child. Meanwhile, Linda, who found out I didn't have a boyfriend, said, "Would you like to meet my son?" That was how I met my husband, Edward. To be honest, I wasn't very excited at first, but as soon as I met him, my heart started beating. I was drawn to Edward's smiling face, which was like a blooming flower. He talked about his work, his friends, and his hobbies in traveling, and made me laugh a lot. We naturally became a couple and got married 2 years ago. I'm worried about Mom, so is it okay if we live together? My husband, who had been living with Linda at his parents' house, asked me about living together. If Linda, my mother-in-law, had been a difficult person, I might have hesitated, but I liked her and we quickly decided to live together. I'm really happy that Shelley is becoming my daughter-in-law. Don't worry about the housework. Leave it to me. Shelley, just take care of your mother the most. I also felt like crying when Linda became a little teary-eyed. In fact, my mother had been in and out of the hospital after being diagnosed with cancer around that time. Her condition was not good, and my father and I were running the store. My mother used to have a good figure, but she had lost a lot of weight since she got sick. I haven't been this skinny in how many years? Although my mother was laughing, there were days when she was bedridden all day when her body was not feeling well. For my parents' sake, I did the housework in my parents' home on the second floor between my jobs. Honestly, I was so busy that I couldn't even take care of my in-laws, and I was completely dependent on my mother-in-law. I'm sorry, Linda. I haven't been able to do much for this house. As I bowed my head to my mother-in-law, she smiled and said, "What are you saying? Don't worry about us, okay?" Previously, my mother-in-law said she regrets not being able to take care of her own parents. She always told me that. I was so grateful for having a mother-in-law like Linda. However, my husband Edward had a completely different attitude. I understand that your family is going through a tough time, but aren't you relying on too much on my mom? You got married, so think about which family should be prioritized. Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Since it was true that I was relying on my mother-in-law, I couldn't strongly argue back. Moreover, when my husband saw me come back from my parents' house, he said,
Shelley, prepare the dinner. Hurry.
Soon after coming home, my husband began to demand that I do housework. He gave me various orders, but he lay on the sofa, laughing while watching TV. My mother-in-law, who couldn't bear to see this go on, yelled,
Edward, stop it already.
Her family is going through a tough time. You know that.
And yet, you come home and order her around like a slave? Who do you think you are?
My husband was surprised and taken aback by the anger of my mother-in-law.
What are you talking about? I married because I wanted you to have an easy life. I just thought it was natural for a daughter-in-law to prioritize her in-laws.
My mother-in-law continued to scold my husband, who kept making excuses.
You're just like your father, with no consideration for others.
With his mother's words, my husband sulked and fell silent. My in-laws were divorced, and Edward's father seemed to have been quite a domineering husband, and my mother-in-law had a hard time with him. She laughed and told me that she was the one who asked for a divorce after her grandparents passed away. From that day on, my husband became more subdued, but he didn't like it when my mother-in-law supported me more than him, and our relationship as a married couple wasn't that great. Meanwhile, my mother's condition worsened and she was hospitalized. The doctor told us that her condition was quite serious, so if there was anyone we wanted to see her, we should call them. When I told my husband and mother-in-law, Linda cried and said,
Shelley, your mother always listened to my boring stories with a smile. You must feel so lonely and frustrated. I tried not to cry too much, but my mother-in-law's words made tears overflow. We embraced each other and cried together. My husband had a look on his face as if he had been left behind. 3 weeks after that, my mother passed away. I had seen her suffer through hospitalizations and painful expressions, but in the end, she passed away as if falling asleep.
Mom, you can finally rest now. I'm happy for you. My father and I shed tears while looking at my mother. My husband and mother-in-law had been informed in advance about my mother's critical condition.
Please, spend some time together as a family of 3.
Don't worry about us. Let us know if there is anything we can do. A few days later, my mother passed away, and I informed Linda about it, and she said,
Let's say goodbye with a smile, okay?
My father and I were truly grateful for her words. But the words that my husband Edward said were unbelievable.
Oh, I can't attend the funeral. I'm going on a trip. Besides, you haven't done much of wifey duties. And yet you were so selfish.
My husband said that to me in a flat tone on the phone.
Wait a minute. What trip?
Are you serious here?
My mom has been in critical condition. Haven't I told you that in advance? Have I?
My husband sighed at my words.
Even if you say that, I applied for the trip 6 months ago, and it's too late to cancel now. Besides, it would be a waste of money.
I became emotional at my husband's grumbling.
You're saying that you would rather go on the trip than attend my mother's funeral? Think about it for a sec. It's totally inhuman. Shut up. I can't go anyway. Hang it up.
My husband hung up the phone after saying that. Neither my mother-in-law nor I had been informed about my husband's travel plans. He probably thought that we would stop him from going if we found out. I later learned that he had been secretly packing his bags in his car to avoid suspicion on the day of departure. When I returned to my in-laws' house and told my mother-in-law about the situation, her face turned red with anger. Even at the funeral, she continued to apologize to my relatives for her son's unreasonable behavior. Linda, please lift your head up. You did nothing wrong. You have always been kind to me, and my father and I are grateful. My mother also used to say that she was glad to have you as my mother-in-law. My father next to me also spoke to my mother-in-law.
Shelley is right. We are truly grateful to you for making time for our family to spend together at the end.
My mother-in-law kept crying. In the end, we said goodbye to my mom with a smile. I thought that from now on, I would do my best for my in-laws' house, as I had been relying on my mother-in-law so much. However, just 3 days after my mother passed away, something happened. As soon as I returned home from my parents' house to my in-laws' house, I noticed that something was wrong. It was already dark, but there was no light in the house, and it was quiet inside. When I entered the living room, I was surprised and let out a loud voice.
Linda! Linda!
I found my mother-in-law on the floor. Her body had already become cold. I panicked, but immediately called an ambulance. However, shortly after arriving at the hospital, the doctor told me that my mother-in-law had passed away. The cause of death was a heart attack. It was a sudden and unbelievable reality. I contacted my father and tried to call my husband, but couldn't get through. It wasn't until 2 days after my mother-in-law's death that I was able to reach my husband.
Shelley, I'm sorry about your mom's funeral. Well, I'm tired, so I want to rest at home soon. Are you resting too now? The funeral is over?
He continued with a smirk, and I told him, we're about to attend the funeral.
Huh? It's been about 5 days since your mother passed away, right?
Hearing my husband's thoughtless words, I became emotional.
It's your mother's, Linda's funeral. She had a heart attack 2 days ago and passed away while you were enjoying your trip like an idiot.
In a raised voice, I hung up the phone and sent the address of the funeral home to my husband's smartphone. The master of the ceremony was my mother-in-law's brother, my uncle. My husband arrived after the funeral was over.
Mom!
Everyone looked at my husband with cold eyes as he arrived in a panic. He was wearing a brightly colored sweatshirt in stark contrast to our black funeral attire. My uncle berated him for his inappropriate attire.
Edward, why did you bother coming now? Shelley and Linda had told me everything. Do you even realize how stupid you were?
My husband's face turned pale as my uncle raged on.
Edward, did you enjoy your trip? Shelley had to work a new place, even though she just lost her mother's.
My husband responded defensively to my father.
Why didn't you tell me about something so important?
What are you talking about? I called you multiple times. You even turned off your phone, didn't you? Your boss and colleagues even came to my mother's wake. It turned out that my husband had told his company that he was going on a family trip. His insensitive actions and words made me feel really pathetic. Of course, my husband's colleagues and bosses came to Linda's wake as well. He fell to his knees and started crying loudly, but no one comforted him. Then I approached him with a certain determination. By the way, you know what I want the most right now. I want a divorce from you. I glared at him as he begged and cried.
Why? Why divorce? I'll work hard. Without you, Shelly,
Yeah, right. Without me, there won't be anyone to take care of your daily life, right?
Wait,
Are you kidding me? I refuse to live a life like that. I don't need you in my life. After I coldly and calmly said that, my husband didn't say anything back. After a while, our divorce was finalized, with my father accompanying me during the discussion. In the end, my husband completely turned around and said to me,
you will regret leaving me. I'm going to be rich.
I felt nothing but disgust towards my ex-husband, who spoke as if he was taunting us. The husband who used to have a smile as beautiful as blooming flowers was no longer there. Moreover, to my surprise, he had quit his job. Or rather, he had no choice but to quit. After that incident, when he went to work, he received harsh, icy stares from his boss and colleagues. Unable to bear it, he apparently quit his job, using a resignation agency a few days later. When I heard about it, I was disgusted by his dishonesty. I couldn't help but feel ashamed that he had once been my husband. Breaking up with him was truly the best decision. Several weeks after the divorce was finalized, my ex-husband ran into the store with a pale face and pleaded,
Shelly, please help me. This can't be happening.
As it turned out, on the day my mother passed away, my late mother-in-law Linda had taken a certain action. She had changed the beneficiary of her life insurance to me with the intention of cutting ties with Edward. My ex-husband, who planned to support himself with the life insurance for the time being, was quite panicked after finding out about this. Yet, he thought he could manage somehow, as he still had the house. But the house had originally belonged to his uncle. Having lost his job and his house, my ex-husband boldly asked me for help.
Hey, help me out, Shelly. Can you let me stay in this house for a while? This is all because you took the money that I was supposed to receive. You should take responsibility and support me.
I retorted to my incoherent ex-husband with those words. I am deeply grateful for all the help your mother had given to me, but I have no gratitude towards you. Then my ex-husband turned bright red and tried to grab me.
Edward, stop it already. Don't come any closer to my daughter.
My father immediately appeared from the back of the store and pulled my ex-husband away. Then we heard the sound of a police car stopping in front of the store.
My daughter's ex-husband is stalking her. Please, take this guy away. Quickly.
My father had reported Edward to the police as soon as he saw him. My agitated ex-husband's elbow hit the police officer's cheek, and he was taken away in. After that, my ex-husband's life followed a downward spiral. He apparently asked his relatives for help, but was rejected by all of them. It was a case of reaping what he sowed. I also issued a restraining order against him. Since that day, he hasn't appeared in front of me again. And then, I rented the empty store next to the shop and started a flower arrangement class. At first, most of the students were regular customers, but now we have new students joining us, and we are enjoying it. My father was depressed for a while, but gradually regained his spirits and worked hard. My mother and mother-in-law Linda loved this shop, and I want to continue to protect it with my father.
It's been 10 years. However, Tony called me out of the blue, and I couldn't help but wonder what he wanted from me. To my surprise, he said something shocking.
I'm going back to your home with my wife, so you need to leave. That place belongs to us.
I couldn't believe what I heard. I decided to set the record straight for Tony, who was still living in a fantasy world. Our family home will never be in your hands. My name is Andrea Jones, and I'm a 34-year-old office worker. Although I'm currently single, I was actually married once to a guy named Tony, who, to be honest, was quite unbearable to even think about. We met at work when I was 23, and he was 22 as a new employee. As his mentor, I told him the ropes, and we ended up working together on several projects. Tony was an energetic and lively new hire with a great sense of humor, and we had a lot of fun working together. One day, at a company drinking party, he approached me and said,
Andrea, would you like to go on a date with me? I've been quite interested in you.
I was taken aback, but I agreed, and we began dating. We had a great time together during our relationship. He would take me to various fun places for dates, not just the usual spots, but also some hidden gems. We had great conversations, and he always made me laugh. I found myself increasingly drawn to him. We continued dating without any problems, but about 6 months into our relationship, I found out I was pregnant.
You're pregnant?
Yeah, I'm 9 weeks pregnant.
I'm so happy to become a father.
But we are not even married yet.
Of course, we'll get married. Now that we have a child, let's start a happy family together.
Hearing him say that, I felt relieved and happy. And so, we decided to get married. When we told our parents, they were surprised that we became pregnant before getting married, but were reassured by the fact that we worked at the same company. We went to his parents first to ask for their blessing, but instead, they apologized and said,
We are sorry that our son has caused you trouble.
Then his mother said, Please take care of him, Andrea.
Mom, normally it's the husband who is responsible for taking care of his wife. No, you are easy to get carried away, so Andrea needs to hold the reins on you. Hey, haha.
Tony and his parents seemed to get along well, and I felt happy about that. If he grew up in such a family, I was sure he would care for our child and we can become a happy family. I imagined our future with hope. Then came the day to visit my parents and ask for their blessing.
Nice to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. I'm Tony, and I want to marry your daughter. I apologize for changing the order of things, but I promise to take responsibility and build a happy family.
He bowed and apologized. My parents weren't really angry, but they seemed to trust him more because of his courteous introduction. At that moment, I'm home! Welcome back, Christina. We have a guest? Yes, remember? I told you that Andrea's fiancé visiting today. Oh, was that today? Come over here and introduce yourself. All right. My sister Christina came along, chatting happily with my mother. Nice to meet you. I'm Andrea's sister,
Christina?
Oh, Tony? Wait, you two know each other? We were in the same club at the same university. Oh, really? I was surprised by her statement and looked at Tony, and he nodded in agreement. My sister was 21 at the time and a senior in college, and she and Tony were in the same club, with Tony being her senior by 1 year. It's a small world, I said, surprised, just like the two of them.
Whoa, I can't believe you are Andrea's sister.
I was also surprised that you're my sister's fiancé, Tony. Our last name in Jones, a very common name, so I guess it's hard to tell we are sisters.
If Christina already knows Tony, then it's like he's already family.
My father said, and my mother smiled kindly. Thus, the marriage greetings ended in a friendly atmosphere. The dinner party for both families' greetings was also enjoyable, and we got married and became husband and wife. I went on maternity leave as I was pregnant and focused on household chores while enjoying our newlywed life. Every day, I made lunch boxes for my husband, cleaned the house, cooked dinner, and waited for him to come home. I love my job, so I planned to return to work after my maternity leave, but I also thought it would be nice to experience being a housewife like this. It is probably the most peaceful and relaxed time to enjoy our newlywed life, since it will become quite hectic once the baby arrives. Tony seems to be busy with work, and some days he came home late, but we were happy to spend our weekends together. Soon after, I went into labor and gave birth to our beautiful baby girl. Tony was very happy to meet his daughter.
She's so cute. She's like an angel,
He said, holding our daughter. I thought he would be a great dad as I smiled at him. After that, I was discharged from the hospital and returned home to focus on child rearing while on maternity leave. I felt so happy just by spending time with my adorable daughter every day. Of course, there are difficult times like the baby crying at night, but she was so cute that nothing bothered me, except for one thing. It was that my husband's return home was getting later and later every day. Even before, he often came home after 10 p.m. when work was busy. But recently, he had started coming home after midnight or around 2 a.m. As these days increased, I got a little frustrated. After all, it's tough with a newborn baby, and just having my husband at home makes me feel at ease. One day, I expressed my dissatisfaction to my husband. Hey, are you really that busy with work? I've only been working for about 2 years, but even during the busy season, I wasn't that busy. My husband looked troubled.
Well, I have to work this much or I won't finish my work. Besides, I have to work hard and earn money for us now, right?
That's true, but I couldn't say anything more when he said that. And on weekends, he seems tired and just slept in his room all day, only coming to the living room during meal times. He didn't play with our daughter much, and he was different from the husband I had envisioned. But if work was busy, there was nothing I could do but accept it. But in the midst of all this, I found out a shocking fact from a colleague at work who contacted me. The call came during the day. Hey, isn't this Tony? My colleague was apparently off that day, and she came to town to do some shopping. She saw my husband dressed in a suit, walking with a woman she didn't know, and she took a picture and sent it to me. What? Are you kidding me? I was so shocked when I saw the person in the photo that my head went completely blank. The woman next to my husband was my sister Christina. The two of them were holding hands affectionately, and it didn't look like they were just relatives. Furthermore, when my colleague secretly followed them, it seems that the two of them boldly entered the hotel in broad daylight. I felt as if my head had been hit with a blunt object when I heard about it. After that, I decided to hire a private investigator to confirm whether they were really having an affair. I still had a part of me that wanted to believe in my husband. However, it turned out that my husband was indeed having an affair with my sister, and several evidence photos were sent to me from the investigator. When I asked my colleague, she said that my husband hadn't been working overtime for the past few years and always left work on time. In other words, he had been lying to me and meeting with my sister all along. with the evidence in hand, I felt an indescribable anger toward my husband and sister. I immediately confronted my husband, showing him the evidence photos and asking him what he thought he was doing by having an affair with my sister. He couldn't deny it and eventually confessed.
Christina was the one who came on to me. At first, we were meeting with a few friends from the university club, but then we started meeting alone. Before we knew it, we were meeting more than half of the week.
That's enough. Do you think you can get away with doing something like this? I'm going to divorce you and make you pay alimony.
I guess that's inevitable.
Of course. I will make Christina pay too.
Huh?
He was very surprised when I said that.
She's still a student and will graduate soon. It's too cruel to demand alimony from your own sister.
I think the one who deserves the criticism from society is my sister, who slept with her sister's husband. If you don't want to burden Christina, then you should pay for both of you. Considering the going rate, it would be around $70,000 for two people.
$70,000? That's outrageous.
You did something that warrants that kind of payment. You're going to take responsibility for your actions. When I said that, he turned pale.
Anyway, let's talk about this thoroughly next time.
He said that, and we agreed to have a discussion with both families present. He said he would stay in a business hotel for a while, so I was left to live with my daughter and think about our future. And so, we decided to have a discussion about it at my parents' house over the weekend. But my husband and sister didn't show up. This surprised not only me, but also our parents and my in-laws.
We are truly sorry about this. It's bad enough that he's causing you trouble, but not showing up to this meeting is beyond our comprehension.
They said, apologizing profusely.
Well, our daughter's not here either, so we are both at fault.
They also expressed their concern for me, who was the main victim in this situation.
If the two of them continue to be unresponsive, we'll pay the compensation for you, and we'll also cover the child support payments.
My in-laws apologized deeply once again, and my parents paid me the compensation that my sister was supposed to pay. I felt uneasy about receiving money from my parents, but they assured me that they would find my sister and make her pay, so I didn't have to worry. Honestly, as a single mother who has to raise my daughter, I could use all the money I could get, so I was grateful. In the end, we couldn't reach either Tony or Christina. I also went to Tony's workplace, but he had apparently submitted his resignation letter and quit. Christina had just graduated from college and planned to become a part-time worker as she hadn't found a real job yet. I knew she was mobile, but I never thought my husband would abandon everything and elope with her. After that, I lost all contact with them. Later, a pre-filled divorce form was sent to me, which made me angry, but I signed it and submitted it immediately. As Tony has resigned from his job, I decided to return to work after my maternity leave. My colleagues sympathized with me and supported me, saying that it would be difficult, but I should hang in there. From then on, I worked hard to raise my daughter. I sometimes received help from my parents to raise her, and we made a lot of memories together. Before I knew it, 10 years had passed, and my daughter had grown up to be a wonderful girl. Amidst that, I received a call from an unknown number. I felt uneasy, wondering who it could be, but since it could be a work-related person, I decided to answer it. Then, to my surprise, I heard the voice of a certain person.
Andrea? It's me, Tony.
Huh? The person on the phone was my ex-husband. It had been 10 years since then. I couldn't help but wonder what he wanted from me.
How are you doing?
What do you mean? You calling me isn't going to end well.
How are your parents doing?
What's it to you? Why do you even care about my parents?
They're also Christina's parents. What's wrong with worrying about my wife's parents?
My ex-husband said that. I see. He married my sister. But I have a feeling he's up to something. I should be careful and probe for more information. My parents passed away. They both died from an illness.
Seriously? Then what about your family's home?
I inherited it. Then, my ex-husband made a surprising statement.
I'm going back to your home with my wife, so you need to leave.
I couldn't believe what I heard. What are you talking about? I said I inherited it.
I'm saying that Christina and I are going to live there, so you need to leave. Also, why are you the one who inherited the home? Doesn't Christina have the right to inherit it too?
I hope you're joking. After betraying our family like that, how could she possibly have the right to inherit anything?
Don't be ridiculous. I won't accept that. We just had a kid recently, so we are going to turn her family's home into our home.
I decided to set the record straight for Tony, who was still living in a fantasy world. Our family's home will never be in your hands.
What do you mean?
Like I've been saying, I inherited it. And then, I heard a woman's voice, probably my younger sister's. Hey sis, I won't allow you to inherit the house without my permission. We need to talk about the inheritance too. I didn't really want to deal with them anymore. But then, I came up with an idea. I guess we have to talk about it then. I told them to meet me at the coffee shop I specified. And there, I met my ex-husband and sister for the first time in 10 years. Both of them looked shabby, as if they were struggling to make a living. Christina and Tony asked only about the inheritance and the inheritance of the house. I was amazed that they didn't seem to feel sad that our parents had passed away. Actually, the story about our parents' death was a lie. They are living in a different house now. They had sold the old family home so that Christina couldn't return. But I didn't mention that fact, and I just nodded along with their talk. Christina said, "We'll leave it to you to divide the inheritance then." And they left the coffee shop. That was the beginning of my plan. An hour later, I received a call from a friend who had helped me with my plan. I had asked my friend to tell my sister and ex-husband to find out their current address. Once I got the address, I reported it to both sets of parents. Soon after, both sets of parents and I rushed to my sister's house. Why are you here? They were quite shocked by our sudden visit. Both sets of parents demanded reimbursement for the money they had paid in advance for consolation money and child support.
We don't have any money to pay you back. We've been working part-time jobs and barely making ends meet.
They said that, but our parents didn't forgive them.
If that's the case, then you will have to consult with the police or a lawyer and figure out what to do.
The word police and lawyer made my sister's and Tony's face turn pale. That's going to be a problem. If it's okay to pay little by little, we'll pay. So please forgive us. They pleaded while crying. My parents and in-law reluctantly agreed to the condition and told the two that if the payment was delayed, they would immediately take legal action. Christina and Tony fell to the ground with a defeated expression. Did they seriously think they could be forgiven after 10 years? They were really living in a fantasy world. It's a shame that the child has to be raised by such a couple. I can only pray that the child learns from their parents' mistakes. Meanwhile, I live happily with my lovely daughter and my parents. My daughter studies hard and happily tells me about her good grades at school. I plan to work hard so that she can continue to smile in the future. My sister and ex-husband were both lazy, so perhaps that's why they were attracted to each other. I was angry when they eloped and ran away, but I felt satisfied when they were finally found and couldn't run away anymore. Andrea was probably glad to have cut ties with such terrible people. I hope she and her daughter can continue to live happily with their parents. Thank you for watching until the end. If you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.